Hello, welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 145 for May 3rd, 2024. This is another Open Lines Friday. We don't have anything specific set up, but we always get into something. So let me introduce myself. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App. We also have Patrick Anderson, Technical Support Manager for Plantain App on the call. So pretty good brain trust to deal with today. Mostly we get smarter when our clients show up. So this is a event we do every Friday, 10 Central Time. It's all skill levels welcome, beginners through experts and beyond. And it's just an opportunity to get together and talk about Plantain App and the coding challenges that come with it. We record all these. We put them out on YouTube, youtube.com/PlantainApp. So do subscribe to those, set the alarm bell. You'll know when we publish them. We try and get them published within a day or so of when they happen. We run this agenda. We always say hello because this is a friendly gathering around the campfire. And then we always do first call. And then after that we go where the spirit leads. In an hour or so, we'll go to Afterglow. That's where we turn off the recording and enjoy each other for a few more minutes off the record. So do engage, jump in, show and tell. You can show your screen. You can talk about projects that you've been into. The main thing is if you have noise, only if you have noise, we need you to mute so that we don't bother the other participants. And let's see, you can submit things in advance. If you submit them in advance, I'll do a little research and try and have it ready to present. We have nothing submitted in advance today, but you can use this QR code or my email address or any way you know how to get in contact with us. So, hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we start out with first call, just anything that you may be challenged with, something that you brought a question to the meeting. Maybe you can get help or give ideas to our group.
I have one.
Jump in.
I have a requirement to set up on an editable grid a dirty page function. So if they edit the grid, they don't navigate, and they go to navigate away from it without saving, that I give them a warning. And I don't know how to implement that. Or if I can implement that.
If you can tell by my blank look, I know nothing about how to do that. That wanders off into the realm of JavaScript, I think. Anyone done that? Brain trust is not coming through for you, Jim.
I know. Okay. I was going to say crickets, but I think the appropriate response right now is cicadas, right?
So, Jim, you and I talked about this some, and I looked up and saw and I found some JavaScript possibilities. But what was the limitation? It was that we weren't sure what to listen for. I can't remember because I found.
Yeah, we couldn't find how to hook into. Like there in Angular, it shows that there's a ng-dirty event.
Right. It was to see whether or not things had changed in the listing or not. That was the thing that we were struggling with. Is
Right.
how do we know whether or not the data actually changed? Yep.
Right. But hooking to that event was where we were running into issues.
Yeah.
So are you putting the entire listing or just one row into edit?
The entire listing's in edit.
Okay. And so people are changing things, and you don't know that it's changed. So typically in that scenario, what? There's one button that does the save of the entire listing, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
So if it's, I'm just kicking stuff around, right? If it's hard to detect whether the page had changed at all, is it possible to just make sure that they hit the save button regardless?
And actually, that's one of the things I suggested was that is that setting something on the save button so that so even if they I think checking whether or not that was saved, and your message could indicate, did you make changes? You know, make sure you don't navigate away if you did, something like that.
So
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say that that could work. I mean, if we had row by row, it could be an autosave function if they try to navigate away from the page, or something just to force where I could force the save if I could,
Mhm. Is this a scenario where it needs to be all or nothing?
as far as the grid,
Yes, I mean, could individual things be saved?
it would be an all or nothing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, I will keep exploring.
Okay. Um,
Matt has his hand up.
is that a different topic, Matt?
Yes, it is, but I can
Okay.
wait, no problem.
Yeah, I was on the last. I was still pondering a little bit on the last one. Um, I'm wondering whether we could implement such a feature, what that might look like. Anyway, I don't know enough about it. So let's go on to you, Matt. Sorry, Jim.
So I have, first of all, I'd be also interested in whatever you come up with, Jim, if you at some point wouldn't mind sharing, but different topic entirely. Extend list properties. Here's what my objective is. Because of some email deliverability issues, some of the enterprise clients would prefer to have a list of users, in this case, that need to log in. And what they would like is a spreadsheet that contains, first, last, email, and then a login link, so they can distribute it in a different fashion. Typically, what the request was, like, send it via, in their case, via internal Teams chat. So my goal would be obviously to produce that. And, I was wondering how best to do that. Is that something that A, is feasible? B, would that be done? Was intending to use, or actually started to use, create a list, extend the list with a new property, called user link or whatever, and then attempt to populate that list with that individual login link, and then turn around and save it and then download it as a spreadsheet.
So first of all, I have used extend list properties, and I know that you can do that. Wondering if another approach might be more straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to create a token that returns the login link for a particular user, and that could be done by way of a workflow token,
Mm-hmm.
then in your initial load, create list from SQL, you could say, username, user ID, and then use the ID and the token to generate the custom one during that.
So in that case, well, what I was probably going to do something similar, that's maybe not, but this is my thinking anyway, was to create the list, then extend the list properties with a new column, and then use a execute actions on a list to populate that column. But that seems to be different than what you're suggesting. So are you suggesting, for instance, have a parent workflow where you get the username and all the basic information, called a child workflow that returns a token with the link in it?
I don't think so. Is your list of names, is that a relatively simple SQL query?
Yeah, that's, yep.
Okay. So if you create a in your maybe I should answer the question that you asked. Because it's, I mean, the feature works. So let's go back to that. And let me see if I can. There might be an example of doing this. Nope.
So previously on another workflow, I'd used the extend list properties to add a bunch of new properties to the existing list, and it works fine. What my specific case or question really is about the other two choices on that action: list object properties and the list properties.
Action. So you have some kind of a list, and then there's so your question was about list object properties and list properties.
Well, yes, in the case of, is that something to solve the problem I have? Is that something, an approach I could use or should use, or I'm obviously open to any suggestion. So if I mean, I can add a property, to the list, no problem. The property value is the question. How do you dynamically populate that property value? I don't think I want to keep iterating the extend the list. I want to do it once, put a column in there, and then fill it in with dynamic values, I think.
So I think once you extend it, you would have to I mean, you're giving it a property value. Well, Patrick, do you know the answer to this one before I fumble around a lot more? Because otherwise, I'll just play here.
Maybe I don't totally understand the situation, but I mean, you can put a token in there.
Okay.
So
All right. So in using it previously, I have, for example, created a list, then extended the list with a token value. That token value is then static for that list. So the question is, can I populate that list column with the dynamic value that changes with each login link?
It, I think Dale's going where I was, where I think, yeah, I think.
Well, at this moment, I'm just trying to set up a background. So let's see if.
Yeah.
So I've got a create list. That didn't do what I expected. Create list from SQL, getting user ID, username from users into user list. So I should have a bunch of that. And then list to JSON. Take the
You need
list,
to include all fields.
Include all fields. Thank you. Okay, I wonder about this one. We can check on that in just a second. So hopefully this will get us user ID, usernames. And it does. So we have an array of user ID, usernames. So if we wanted to create a login link for those user IDs or do any other thing, let's see, additional property of login link, and I'm going to call it the user list. I don't know if this will work. I'm just boiling things a little bit. So mine, it added login link, but it didn't populate it. So that wasn't a useful thing. Let's undo that and go back to the place where you were trying to start. So we're not, we do want to include all fields. We're not going to add login link here. And so we'll save that. So now making a little room. The question was extend list properties, and the list name is user list, and we want to add a property called login link, and for give it a value. So now this list of JSON is going to just show us what our list looks like. So we get a new property, but at point where we're adding it, it's at the global level, not the
Right.
So I think one way to do the thing that you're talking about would be to do a for each on the list and create a new list.
Create a new list that I mean, the question then becomes how to create the individual login links
Yeah.
each iteratively and then populate the JSON in this case.
So if we were to iterate through user list and create user list 2,
Yeah.
as we were iterating through, you'd have access to user ID, username, and you could create a login link from user ID and add it. So I can show you that example. Shall we go there? Let's execute actions for each entry. We're going to go through user list and do some things. Let's get set up first, though. We're going to create a new list. Create a how do I initialize, create a new list? Am I looking for something that isn't here? Extend list.
Is it create object? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know if you saw Ben's chat suggestion.
Yes, that's yes, that will probably work. And then let's the other thing we're going to need is to be able to add list entries, and that's the thing that we're going to do. So let's do that. We'll create list from SQL and suggestion. So this is going to create user ID, username. It's the same structure. We're going to call it user list 2 because I'm not very imaginative today. And actually, we can add the prop and we've already got the login link present, so we don't even have to extend anything. We just have to add to it. So now so we've got user list 2. We can as we're going through user list, we can in our lists section here, we're going to add a list entry. The list entry, the username, the list name that we're doing is user list 2. We're going to add user ID, username, link, and so the values are going to come. We're iterating through user list, so we have the originals. So we're going to do user list user ID, user list, user name, and then we're going to create a new value. I'm going to fake it here for a minute. This is the new login link for, and then this same value. This is just to prove that you can use tokens. And so anything that we can use to generate, whatever we generate, we'll be able to do that. This is just an intermediate step. So this thing is going to add list entries over and over again for everybody in the list. And that gives us user list. We're adding to user list 2. And so now in our list of JSON, we no longer care about what's in user list. We're going to get user list 2 to see how it came out. And we're outputting still to the user JSON. All right, so now we'll save and test. $155, 599 failed to run. Error in SQL. I think that's this one. 599, user ID, username from users. So see if that does it. So now we're getting different values for every login link, right? So it's essentially copied from user list to user list 2, and it's done something. So now we just need to create a login link in this, and we're good to go. So what's the create an auto login link is the action. We want to create a login link for user list, user ID, and we're not. We'll give them one login, and do I need to set a validity period here?
I think if you leave it blank, it'll be forever.
If I just don't touch it?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, so this will be login link. And so now we can, instead of this thing, we'll say login link. You can, if this works, you can work out the details.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That is cool. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why did you need to go use 2 SQL queries? 2 lists.
So the way that we solved it this time, and I think there's other ways to solve it, like anything else, but the way we solved it is that we were going to use the add list entry action to populate a list.
Yeah.
And we needed a list to populate.
So you couldn't repopulate that user list, right? Yeah. Addability. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and as Ben is pointing out, you can't edit a list. So we had we acquired our data in this SQL query that got the users that we wanted to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And that was user list.
Okay.
And then this is create an empty list. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so you're creating a list with data in it, not complete. You're creating a complete shell and then merging the two with the actions,
Yes,
with the execute actions. Okay.
yes.
Hmm.
Um, so the would you like to see the solution, what I was, my alternative that I was bringing up?
Yeah, sure.
So, because I think this would work reasonably well. So we're gonna do a workflow that says new login link for user. So we can just pass this a user ID, and we're going to create a login link. It's very simple. We're going to create a login link called, and we're going to do this for the user that came in. So whatever comes into this workflow, we're going to create one login. It's going to create something called login link, and we're going to output login link. So if we save and test this and we pass it a user ID, any valid user ID will do. Hopefully I can pick one that's good. And so we get a link. So anytime we do this, we get a link. So that's step one. Step two is that we can do a token. And I'm just going to go down here to test and add a token. And it's going to be called, and it's going to call new login link for user. And it's going to be done by running a workflow, login link for user. So we're just running our exposing our workflow as a token.
Right.
And the output is going to be a login link. So if we save and test this, it automatically prompts for a user ID because that's the input to the workflow. And so if we pass it a good user ID, it does this. So now this token, anytime you use this token, you get a login link.
So you put that token in the list?
In the create. So this is, we're going to call this flow. So now we start with a more simple, we're going to do a SQL, create list from SQL. And so we select user ID, user name, and Ben has no faith that this is going to work. And maybe I have no faith this is going to work. We'll see. And then, yeah, there's.
Well, I thought where you're going to go with this was to do the select, then put it in a list, then extend the list with this test new login link token.
Yeah, I don't think you have access in the extend. I don't think you have access to each individual row.
You're right. Yeah, it's still the same. You're still in the same.
Same boat. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm not.
quandary or refer.
I got my metaphors. I've done something similar to this with listings, and that's different because you select out the data and then you have it as you can run a token against it, but this probably isn't going to let me go. So points for Ben for calling me out before it even happens. Okay, so we at least showed you a way to get it done. We didn't use extend, but we did use add to a list and initialize the list. All right, so
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Since Ben and Jim have hands up, if either of you have something to comment about what we were just working on, let's start there, and then we'll go on to a new topic.
So my question on your SQL you were writing there, if you put that into a subquery, so you did select with your token name from open parens, close parens, select users, would you have access to the user ID at that point to run your token and get the output?
It's still, I think I've tried to do this before also, and it's still a matter of that you need to put a variable inside the token, and that breaks the token syntax. You need to put a SQL variable inside the token, and then that breaks the token syntax. So
okay.
Yeah.
So
The thing that makes it easier for me to remember is whenever you're dealing with SQL and the built-in my tokens, think of it this way. The tokens, the way they get replaced is once. The
Yep.
entire script gets reviewed by the system. It replaces all the tokens first, then it executes the script. It doesn't replace the tokens in loops. So it's like if you have a for loop or anything like that, it's not going to continually replace the tokens inside that script. It does it one time. So whatever the value returns, that's going to be the value, however many times it's going to add it to whatever your script is doing.
So at least we came up with a solution that will work so cool. So now, Ben, you're off mute and new topic. What do you got?
Actually, not a new topic. It was two things, but one thing already got covered with Matt's, with the whole extend thing. I showed you that you don't need to do the extend if you're using SQL, because all you need to do is submit a blank value in your original select statement. So that gives you the additional field. So it just saves you one little step. So you don't have to make a select statement and then extend it to add a field to it. If you just add it to your original SQL statement and just give it a blank value, then you have your field. The other thing was for Jim regarding his thing from prior about the grid. I had a question. Is there a particular reason why your grid, I'm assuming what you do is you have a grid that's defaulted to edit mode and originally is blank, and then they keep on hitting add record to get more rows?
No, they're pulling up a grid and editing existing rows to put in a value or to update a value. And then they're sometimes navigating away before hitting the save button.
Okay. What I'm thinking, it's kind of a roundabout way of doing it, but in your data table, you could, I'm working this out in my head because what you just said was a little different than what I thought you were doing. But what if in the data table that has those records, you had an additional field? So whatever the value is that they're changing, but then you add a duplicate field within the same record and call it new value. And typically that's always blank. When they do that grid and you hit the submit button or the save button, have the update SQL modify not the original value field, but the new value field. So you're storing the data in a different field. You still have the original value. And then when you go to navigate off that page, you could do another SQL statement as a quick check and say, do any of these records have a new value field that's not blank. And if that's true, then you can ask them, do you want to save this data? And if they say yes, then you move the new value over to the value field. And that would make that
So
change permanent.
in my implementation now, I almost have that because I have two controls in the grid, that one that gets edited and one that doesn't, one that's hidden. And in my save command, I look for differences between those two controls. But how would I hook in to get they're navigating away from the page? Where would I hook that on a grid, on a page with a grid?
Well, aren't you controlling their navigation yourself through buttons?
I am. I mean, they can navigate and populate different things, but yes.
So that's then under your control. It's wherever your buttons are that are navigating, whether it be a back, a next, whatever it is, that's where you would then have to write your code to do another check to see if values have changed in your data table, and then work accordingly, pop up a message and say, we've detected that you made changes to the grid. Do you want to save those changes now?
Okay. I'll have to go play with that and see. So writing this script, I hadn't thought about, I was looking for more of like thinking of it more of a global page implementation rather than hooking something onto every button. I was thinking there might be a built-in page dirty type JavaScript, function or something that. But
well, if you turn it into a workflow where you pass in whatever your unique ID is for the parent record of that grid, because I'm assuming you got to have some sort of a parent ID for each one of those child records that you're putting in. So if you make a workflow and just pass it the parent ID of whatever it is, and then that workflow will run the SQL statement to check all the child records to see if any of them have that new value versus the original value. If there's a difference, then that returns a true false of whether the data is dirty. Then you just execute that workflow on whatever button you have. It's not like you have to rewrite the code every single time. And then you have your method there to check if the data for that particular grid for that parent ID has been modified and unsaved.
Right. Okay. I'll go play with that. Thank you.
Welcome.
And Dale's trying something too, I see.
Oh, I was just illustrating for anybody who's watching this after the fact, the inline grid edit, but then I struggled into this with it not saving my entries. So now I've wandered into something I don't understand. When you do inline edit, it's supposed to automatically save what you've done, correct? Data here is my data sources. Users and user ID. I've got all the fields. I have first name set up as text box, no validation. Anyone have any idea why this isn't saving?
I was on mute.
Did you
If
put
you go
anything
into
in
your
the update,
yeah, that's where I was
your
just
data
going.
source?
I'm sorry.
Your data source. And go to change. You see how you have select star from users? Scroll down. You have SQL for inserting, keep going, SQL for updating. You have to put something in there.
It just doesn't automatically. Okay. So
Not if you're doing a SQL statement. If you're using one of your built-in entities, it will, because it understands what it needs to do. But if you're doing a manual SQL statement, you then need to do a manual insert and update and delete.
So how would you refer to user ID? I guess it's just user ID.
Yeah, it's the bracket token syntax.
That.
And in my case, I use a stored procedure there, so you can get everything, and you can get very complex in your updating.
Mm-hmm. And then alternately, again, in the button itself, it's got this on save after each row. So this is an additional, this is at the row, it's at the row level? Yes. Yes, because then there's incomplete. So you could do it. Could have done it here as well, rather than letting the listing do it as a whole. Anyway, so that's just basic. How do we make inline editing work? Doesn't deal at all with how do we keep people from navigating away. All right.
Are we at a move on point?
We are. I see that Matt has asked me to export this example, so I will do that.
Well, before you export it,
Mhm.
that's what I wanted to talk about, is that I figured out how to do it without creating a new list.
All right.
I was like, there must be a way. So
You tell, Patrick, pencil in the hand.
All right, so are
you
you
want
ready?
me to share my screen, or do you want to?
Yes, let's do
okay.
that.
All right, I'll drag this over here then, and
Cooler heads prevail.
okay, you guys see the screen now? Okay, so I'm highlighting my results here just real quick. So you see that I have user ID, username, and link, and I didn't actually do the get going and getting the link. I just updated it with the user ID, and you see that we have the results that we're looking for. There is that each one of these has a property called link that has an iterated value that matches the user ID that we have for our record. So I created a list from SQL, just like Dale did, select user ID and username, and put it into a list called user list, and then execute actions for each list entry. And then I'm actually within that user list calling the extend list properties action and calling the user list, and then putting in the property name link with the user ID, user list : user ID. So this actually adds the property to the list and then updates it. And then subsequent, so the first one will add the property to the list. Subsequent iterations update that property for that value in the user list.
So that value in the property value could then be for example, the token that Dale created.
The token. Or you could run the run the get link action before before this,
which is probably
and
more
that
straightforward.
and then put it into context and then put it here. So those are the two possibilities, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Very, very good.
So this is actually it's similar, but it's a little bit more straightforward because you don't have the two lists. You're just creating the one list, and then and then in here you're actually updating it.
So you create the list, then you extend the list properties with,
Yep.
in this case, a new column and a token value filling in that column.
And the thing that made me, because I was looking at this and thinking, what really can we not do this? And the thing that made me want to try it is that is this sentence right here. This action can be used both to bulk update all list entries and update entries one by one when used to decide and execute actions for each action. So that's a thing.
Okay, so can you scroll down and show me again the rest of that?
Yeah, so so interestingly enough, I'm doing a for each for the user, the list name called user list, but then in the for each, I'm doing an extend of that same list and adding a property and giving it a value and this is the contextual value for each iteration right here.
So you're referring to your, essentially that's, okay, same list and.
So it was actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Meritorious. Thank you.
So you can extend to a list if you and Patrick, since you had that up and going, it'd be, if you don't mind playing a little bit.
Yeah, I can add in the creating of the login link.
No, I was going to do. I was going to kind of go somewhere else. On the chat, we were talking about the idea that you couldn't update an existing list, but extend list properties. I'm wondering if you were to go back, for example, and change one of your other properties like username to some other value, like adding asterisks around username, would it work? Because and does it make sense to you, or shall I just give it a try?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna
You're not sure.
I think, yeah, I'm not sharing anymore, so let me share again how you're saying that.
Because I mean, it's great that we can extend a property, extend a list and add more data to a list. And that's the question that Matt was asking. But if you wanted to update a list and say conditionally, you're going to walk through a list and you're going to look for something and you're going to change it, you could conditionally walk through the list and for each and change the ones you want. So now being able to update. Yeah. So update.
About that we'll just we'll take the username and put the ID into the username property like
Sure.
that. What do you think? Worth a try?
Absolutely. So let's see.
Makes sense.
Just a straight up update.
And username was the name of my property, right? Yep. Okay.
And this work, Ben has already suggested that this should be named extend.
Yeah, I saw that. Let's see. Well, I guess I did something wrong with user ID, but you can see it added space, so it did work. I just didn't do my token right. That's all. There we go. That should be better. Yep. Username is updated to.
So the end answer here is you can update a list.
Yep.
With extended properties.
updating the
Nice
existing
hidden gem.
property
Okay, so this
and
was
adding a
kind of-
property. Yeah,
Mhm.
good question and good finds.
Yes. Thanks for persevering on that one. So now you saw two techniques for doing it. You can create an entirely new list, which is extra work, or you can just extend it. So Patrick, would you mind exporting that and sending it on to?
Yeah, no problem at all.
All right. We have 5 minutes to do anything you want with. I think the most useful bit of our time might be, let me find another slide here. I do share. First, I'll just mention we're still on target for releasing on May 7. So version 126 will be out on May 7. Lots of our sites, including Community and Campfire, have already been updated to version 126. We're seeing nice results, so we're looking forward to that. But I wanted to hit feature requests because Ben added a new feature request, and I've already voted for it, and I think you should too. Ben's feature request was well, the one that I caught my mind was workflows, Razor Script Action VB. So in tokens, you can do Razor scripts and you can pick whether you want to do C# or VB. But when we did the workflow action within it's within workflows, but it's probably everywhere. But our Razor Script Action just assumes that you're going to do C#. So to me, this is languageism. We should not tell people what language they should write in. And of course, I'm a VB guy over a C# guy. Well, I agree with you, Ben. Calendar, add tooltip on hover. Tooltip feature, that's a nice one too. I haven't used the calendar view in a long time, but makes sense. So those are two things you can vote on, and just as a reminder, and I'm fully expecting Ben to do a feature enhancement request to rename that action to be update, extend and update. All right, what else? 2 minutes. All right, very good conversation today. I know I learned something. I'm just going to scroll through in case there's anything quick that comes to mind. Oh, Anthony added a contribution on Campfire, and this is a good one. So the workflow action locator. First of all, I will remind you, if you haven't heard, we are working internally to improve the error reporting on workflows so that it provides a more useful error so you can find what's broken. But Anthony did two things here. One is a listing that shows the action numbers and what type and what workflow it belongs to, so that if you have a action number in an error message, you could find what it belonged to. And then, if I read this right, the part of our design, the way that we do things, in some cases we have actions that live inside tables by themselves, and in other cases we encode the actions into and this is specifically, I think, for execute actions. The action called execute actions, we embed the JSON code of the actions into the execute actions, which makes it harder to find your actions. And so I believe this SQL, he is suggesting that this will let you find a particular action number that's embedded in something else. And so you could just run the SQL and put an ID number. I haven't tested it. I assume it to be correct. I will mention, like with other things, this solution and this SQL are taking a look at tables that we put in the database, and these are subject to change from version to version. So, I'm assuming this works correctly with version 1.25, but might not work in later versions. And it really will work for the version that he wrote it against. But anyway, thought that might be useful to mention, and I appreciate anyone who adds to our community site, because when we're stuck with a problem, rather than reinventing it, finding somebody else who's done it would be great. In that light, I'll probably take the extend action we were talking about today and pop it into a contribution here so we can remember what it does. All right, now we're 1 minute over. We can't have that, so I'm going to jump to my end slide. Guys, thanks everyone for showing up today. We will do this again next week, every week, Low Code Campfire. So it's better because you were here. Thanks.